Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So this is going to be all about Jaime Lannister's history. There's just like a couple really big signposts in his character's history, and most of them are really well documented, some by other characters, some by himself. So just careful for spoilers for everything that's happened on the show so far. Here we go. The earliest period that we know about is him at Casterly Rock growing up with Cersei. Most of his history there is narrated by Cersei, but some also by Jaime himself, specifically talking about the birth of Tyrion, although Cersei talks a little bit about the birth of Tyrion too, in like a much more sinister way. She's found a way to blame him for just about every problem that she's had. If you remember Cersei in the flashback in the first episode of Season 5, most of the early history that we know about happens before that, so when they're much younger. The way Cersei tells it, she and Jaime were fairly typical children. I mean, typical noble-born children. They exhibited some of the personality traits that their adult characters on the show have right now, but you can write off a lot of Cersei's cruelty, before this incident with Maggie the Frog, as children are cruel. Everybody's been to grade school. Children can be mean. Like, that's just the way children are until they develop morals and a conscience. And just like that consistency, Jaime was kind of the same. Whereas Cersei was very cruel to Tyrion in his crib, Jaime tried to stay her hand. He tried to protect him. But probably the most fun thing about Jaime as a child, or the most funny thing, depending on how you look at it, is that when they were, I would say, like younger than 10, Cersei would dress up as Jaime, and Jaime would dress up as Cersei because they look so alike, and they would walk around the castle to see if anybody would notice. And usually no one would notice. They didn't start getting into trouble together until they started making out. Yes, they did that at a very, very young age. Before that, they've been allowed to spend as much time together as they wanted, day or night. But after that, like their handlers, like all the people that were in charge of taking care of them around the castle, started to separate them more and more. They saw what was going on, and they're like, okay, we need to stop this right now. Because he became a squire at the age of 11, so he was sent to another castle. The place he was sent to was Crake, but that was the beginning of his training. Within a couple years, he participated in his first tournament and started to get better and better and better. So you start to see the Jaime Lannister that you meet in the first episode of Season 1. But the next really big signpost in Jaime's history was his encounter with the Smiling Knight. That happened when he was still squiring for Lord Crake. It was before he joined the Kingsguard. He was only about 15 years old. It was called the Campaign Against the Kingswood Brotherhood. So this really big badass group of bandits led by a person called the Smiling Knight who kind of looked like the Mountain. He was just huge. They had kidnapped a bunch of nobles for ransom and they were hiding out in the Kingswood. It became such a problem that the Mad King sent a force to try and deal with them. Lord Crake was just ordered to be a part of that, so naturally Jaime, being the squire, had to go along. Jaime remembers it as one of his fondest memories just because it was before he joined the Kingsguard, before his life got really complicated. He crossed swords with the Smiling Knight, but it was Arthur Dayne that ended up killing him. Remember, this is like going up against the Mountain. Jaime refers to him as the Mountain of his day. Jaime would have died had it not been for Arthur Dayne, who ended up training him once he did join the Kingsguard. So this is before Jaime was amazing with a sword. So Jaime starts heading home to Casterly Rock after the campaign, but he stops off at King's Landing to see Cersei, who had been living there for a while. And it's while he's there that Cersei tells Jaime about Tywin's plans to marry him off to Lysa Tully. Cersei, not wanting to lose him, suggests to Jaime that he become part of the Kingsguard so that she could be close to him. Now remember, this is before Robert's Rebellion, so Cersei isn't at King's Landing to marry Robert. She was at King's Landing because Tywin still had hopes for marrying her to a Targaryen, namely Daenerys' older brother. Remember, Rhaegar Targaryen had already been betrothed to Elia Martell, but there was still one more male Targaryen heir. He's about 10 years younger than Cersei, but I mean, just look at Marjorie and Tommen. Look at the age gap there. So despite marriage plans for Cersei, she's still pretty convinced that she's going to be marrying a Targaryen. She wants Jaime near her, so she's like, why don't you throw yourself under the bus, join the Kingsguard, and you can be near me all the time. So Cersei arranged behind the scenes at King's Landing to try and get Jaime on the Kingsguard. I mean, she didn't just go straight to King Aerys and be like, could you name Jaime to the Kingsguard? She didn't go right up and ask him. But what she did not know is that tension had been building between the Mad King and Tywin Lannister. So the king was more than happy to name Jaime to the Kingsguard because it means that Tywin will lose his heir. So within the span of a month, they had the tourney at Harrenhal, the famous tourney at Harrenhal where Rhaegar Targaryen gave Lyanna Stark the crown of blue roses. During that, King Aerys named Jaime to the Kingsguard in front of half the kingdom. Remember, this was a really big tournament because The rumor is that Rhaegar was going to marshal the lords to call a great council and depose his father. Now that's just like a fan theory, but Rhaegar had backed the winnings for the tournament so that there was so much money on the line that everybody wanted a piece of it. So almost like the entire kingdom came to this one tournament. So everybody got to watch the Mad King give Tywin Lannister a giant black eye, without actually giving him a black eye. So Jaime and Cersei think that their plan has worked. Jaime's joining the Kingsguard, they'll both be in King's Landing, they can be together. But Tywin, not really realizing what they've been trying to do, throws a giant wrench in the plan because he's pissed at King Aerys. He resigns his hand to the king, returns to Castle Rock, and brings Cersei back with him. So Jaime is stuck in King's Landing now, and Cersei is stuck at Casterly Rock. The next big event in Jaime's life is actually pretty well documented. It's when he earned his name, the Kingslayer. So Jaime has to watch as the Mad King burns Brandon and Rickard Stark, that's Ned Stark's brother and his father, and says he just kind of went away inside himself. Sir Gerald Hightower's like standing there next to him as this is happening, saying, "You swore a vow to guard the king, not to judge him." So Robert's rebellion starts because the North remembers when you kill one of their lords, and because Rhaegar Targaryen had stolen Lyanna Stark, or absconded with her. Jaime tried to join the army, and he tried to go off and fight in the battles. He might have done a pretty good job, but the Mad King forced him to stay at King's Landing to protect him. He wanted to keep Tywin Lannister loyal to the throne by keeping his oldest son right next to him, as if he would threaten Jaime's life. So that's probably one of the only reasons that Tywin did not fight with Robert. You have to remember, though, the reason the King Aerys was so afraid of Tywin, he's insane, but on top of that, Tywin was the most powerful person in the kingdom. This is long before the Lannister gold mines had started to run dry. So as the rebellion is nearing its conclusion, it becomes pretty clear that the Mad King is going to lose. So he devises this plan that he is going to destroy King's Landing using wildfire, rather than let it fall into Robert's hands. So at the very end, just before the sack of King's Landing, Jaime is the only Kingsguard left. He is completely in charge of defending the Red Keep. Tywin rouses his forces, fearing for Jaime's safety, and comes to defend King's Landing. But once Tywin gets inside, he betrays the Mad King. So it's Tywin that began the actual sack of King's Landing. Jaime, realizing what's going on, asks the Mad King, "Hey, please let me go out there and we'll treat with them." The Mad King's response to that is that he wants Jaime to bring him Tywin's head to prove that he is no traitor. Bring him his father's head. Just completely batshit crazy. The Mad King, before he ran the Mad King through, he actually crapped his pants. The Mad King soiled himself. Jaime said that he squealed like a pig as he died. And to keep him from giving the final order for the pyromancers to set fire to the city with wildfire, he slit his throat. The rest of the story we know, they've actually narrated it quite a bit on the show. Ned Stark walks in and sees Jaime standing over the body of the Mad King. He gets labeled the Kingslayer and it becomes this big slight on his honor for the rest of his life. That was the most defining moment in his life till he lost his hand. Now he's just a one-handed Kingslayer, trying to find a way to reclaim some of his own honor, at least in his own eyes, if not in the eyes of everyone else. If you remember, when he and Brienne were in the bathtub and he was telling her the story of how he got the name the Kingslayer, and she's like, "Why didn't you tell anyone what happened? Why didn't you tell Ned Stark?" And he's like, "He would have never believed me." So you learn Jaime's history is a lot more complicated than it's made out to be. So you understand why he dissociates with reality so much. It's just he feels so powerless. But he is not completely without common sense. So I'm really interested to see how he reacts to what's going on with Cersei back in King's Landing. Will Cersei start looking like the Mad King? Will she go on a tear? And if she does, what is Jaime going to do? Because remember, you can't choose who you love, but he's not going to let her metaphorically burn down the city. She's not going to do the exact same thing the Mad King did, but she might end up doing something that's just as destructive. That's actually a really good jumping off point. Here's my big question for you guys. What do you think is Jaime's limit with Cersei? At what point will he completely cut ties? I know it's a little bit different in the books, but the shows have also kind of painted it that way too. He still cares about her, but they're not together like they were in the past. Just based on the pacing of each season, I could totally see Cersei, try to claw her way back to power across season 6, and then if Jaime and her have some sort of final break, it probably won't happen till season 7. Sometimes there are storylines that feel like they go really fast, and some feel like they go really slow. So just a quick reminder, because I forgot to mention it earlier, new round of the giveaway starts now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. I will do a Q&A tomorrow, so leave all your questions. I'll announce the giveaway winner in that too. I haven't done too many Robert's Rebellion videos, so my next bonus video might be from like some things going on during that period. There was some really interesting stuff that happened between Jaime and Rhaegar Targaryen, but he died of the Trident, so it all went to shit. But I just think, based on some of the stuff that went down between them, it gives you a really good idea of what Rhaegar might have done differently had he not died. So while you guys wait for me to post that Q&A, in case you didn't see it this morning, I posted like a really big update on a bunch of big platform changes that YouTube is going through and some stuff behind the scenes that's going on with my channel, some really good stuff. It's all really good news. So you can click here to check that out, learn what's going on, and you can click here to learn all about Arthur Dayne, a character that's very important to Jaime's backstory. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tomorrow.